I guess when people ask me when I first started working with Sasquatch, or how I got to interact with them, what brought me to that, I really have to go into my past and talk about the fact that I was very intuitive as a child, being able to read what people really meant versus what they were saying. I always thought people were lying to me somehow, and what I didn't realize was I was actually reading the subconscious, and I was reading the body, that I was getting two levels of information. And for me, the subconscious information that was going on in them was much louder. And then you know how one thing leads to another, and I found myself working in my early 20s with doctors as a medical intuitive, and then worked with the police over the years. And then interspecies communication sort of happened also. I was swimming with dolphins in Florida, and had a number of encounters, realizing that they were actually talking to me. And the communications are very clear, very specific, very intelligent, very connected, working with me. And I mean, there's a zillion stories I could tell you, but I think the one that was probably had the biggest influence on me was an experience with a dolphin named Dreamer. And that day I was sort of doubting myself and how real it all was. Was it real? And swimming with Dreamer, we were just sort of swimming side by side. She was just keeping me company. And she, you know, her little flick of a tail, and she'd propel herself through the water, and I'm swimming for all I'm worth, and I'm wearing myself out. And I realized how strong they are, these beings, just how powerful their bodies are. So I said to her with my mind, Dreamer, show me how fast you can go, thinking that she'll, you know, whip around the swim area and just show me. Well, she instead, in response, she hooked a fin behind my knee and swam me around, showing me how fast she could go. And, and you know, after choking on the water a little bit, she stopped, and I realized she was laughing at me, that this was her way of joking with me, you know, to show me. And they're right there, and I don't know if they hear you thinking or they pick up the information the same way that we do. It's just a sort of knowing what the communication is. But they are extremely intelligent. They size you up quickly because, again, they are that intuitive. And it's not just body language and chemicals coming off your body that they're reading, or even the vocalizations that humans make that they've learned about. It really is a picking up intuitively your intention, where you really are, not where you think you are, but where your body really is and what it's really doing. And that was an education in itself. And then in South Africa, I found myself working with elephants, working with orphaned elephants, and again realizing that they were talking to me and were responding to my communications. And that's the way that you know that the telepathic communication is working, is when there's what they call behavior modification in the animal based on your communication, your projection. And I did that for, I don't know, on and off for 10 years, and again, incredibly educational. And then the big hairy folk, I've had a number of small experiences with them over the years, but I think one of the more early dramatic experiences was being in Arkansas, Hot Springs. My friends were harvesting crystals, and I was sitting on a log just watching. And I became aware of the presence of a number of very large bodies around me. And I recognized immediately who and what they were. And I communicated like I normally do. You know, we share the same earth, and we're equal here, and we honor each other here. And the large male, I was sitting on a log, a very long log, and the large male came and sat down beside me, and the log sagged, which was a little impressive and scary all at the same time. And what was interesting was he watched with me for a while. The two of us just sat there watching the humans digging in the dirt for crystals. And he finally asked, he said, why do you do this? Because evidently for years they've been watching humans harvest crystals, and nobody's ever explained why the humans do this. And so I explained to him that these particular pieces of earth have a level of communication and information in them that's beneficial to humans, and that we take these bits of earth home with us, and that for us, when we're around the vibration of these bits of earth, these crystals, that it causes us to be calmer and more peaceful and more open to communication coming in from our higher power, which makes us a more peaceful, gentler human being and a wiser expression of life. And he thought about that for a long time, and then his response was, well, anything that makes humans calmer is a good thing. And then he sat for a while longer, and then he got up, and of course the log wasn't, responded to his getting up. And it was just the most amazing experience. At that point, that was the closest encounter I'd had with them, and the most physical encounter that I'd had. They are, for me, the big hairy folk are an amazing expression of life. They're definitely primate. They have their moods, like humans do, likes and dislikes, but they have a connection to the planet that we haven't yet achieved. And over the years of interacting with them and having them share with me, I've gotten some really interesting perspectives on how else we might treat each other, ourselves, and our planet. For instance, one of the things that a female shared with me once in, I think I was in Texas at the time, was that when they eat food, they are partaking of something that the earth gives, an expression of the earth, an extension of the earth. And that when they eat it, when they consume it, and when they acknowledge its source and its value, that acknowledgement, that value is a way of saying thank you. So in a way, it's like our, a lot of people say grace before they eat. They say a little prayer, and it's a way of acknowledging where the food came from and the life forms that went into creating the food for us, the nourishment for us. And they do that as well. That's just what they do. That's their way of giving back to the earth. That's saying thank you and that acknowledgement. So it's things like that that I've seen them do, and experiences that they've shared that tell me this is an evolved species. Again, they have emotional charge like we do, so they're dealing with the primate body with all of its survival instincts, but they have, I would say that their spirituality is a higher percentage in them, expressing the spirituality, recognizing, living their spirituality, or their connection to the source, because to me that's what spirituality is. It's our connection with the source, or what I sometimes call the ultimate whatever. They just include that in their life a lot more than we do. And I found this from dolphins as well. The other thing that I've found that dolphins and Sasquatch do very well is what I call backing and forthing. It's the capacity, the ability to move between realities, and again, that's another whole subject, understanding the nature of reality, that it's like living in a large house, and each room is a different reality. There's the kitchen with all of the rules of kitchen rules, and there's bathroom rules, and there's bedroom rules, and there's living room rules, and each place has its own function and its own way of being. We do something completely different, and yet it's all still part of the house. And so it's like that. It's like Sasquatch live in in the living room and we're in the kitchen and we're very busy in the kitchen and we have no cognizance of the other rooms in the house, and suddenly one walks in from another part of the house and we get real startled, like, where'd you come from? It's like, well, I was just over there. And they have a cognizance of the other rooms in the house, and they're able to walk back and forth between the rooms. They're able to stand in the doorway and observe what's going on in a room without entering. And as we evolve as a species, as Homo sapiens evolve, we're becoming more sensitive to who's walking through the room and to the existence of the other rooms. And I think that's one of the benefits, really, of spending time with Sasquatch is that their bodies know how to do that. And so do dolphins. Dolphins do it frequently as well. And it's just part of how they are. It's natural for them. And the more our bodies spend time with those bodies, the easier it is for us to learn how to do that, incorporate it, and begin to do it ourselves. So I think that's the biggest benefit, the connection to the planet that everybody else seems to have except us. The other thing I notice is different. We are the only species on the planet that judges ourselves. No one else on the planet judges themselves. And I think that's the cause of a great deal of negativity and cause of a lot of the aggression on the planet, defense mechanisms, defensive posturing, and a lot of the negative stuff that we engage in. They don't have that. They're not capable of that, and it's not part of their repertoire. And so they have a different type of life, a different experience of life. And again, the more our bodies spend time with bodies who are like that, the bigger the education is for us, at least the opportunity for an education. The other thing that I think is really important about that species and dolphins is why do they bother? Why do they bother with us? Why do they bother communicating? Why do they bother spending time? And especially like with dolphins, who took so much time with us, showing us what they know and paying attention to how we assimilate the data and really paying attention to how much we're integrating. And over a period of nearly 20 years working with dolphins, them really paying attention to the changes that we've made in the last 20 years. And that seems important to them to know, that they're keeping tabs on our species. And Sasquatch is getting closer to us all the time. They're coming into our room more and more frequently as more of us are becoming intuitively capable of perceiving them. And what I'm being told from both species is that there is a collective shift happening on the planet, that as a collective consciousness, we are moving into another whole way of being. Now remember, their bodies already have incorporated some of that. And what they see is that each species has a unique approach to it and a unique contribution to it, and an important contribution, so that without, if any one of those contributions goes missing, none of us move. That we're all connected, that this is something we are doing together, and that it's important that we're doing it together. So they're eager to help when we're open. They don't want to force anything on us, so they go at our pace. They will absolutely give them half a chance, and they'll stretch you. They absolutely will stretch you and give you an opportunity to completely rethink your paradigms and things that you thought were true. Like, oh yeah, the world's flat, and the dolphins are sitting there going, it is so not. And so a lot of things that we take for granted is our paradigms and belief systems that we needed to get here. But to get to where we're going next, we have to drop a lot of these paradigms now. What got us here, we have to leave behind. It's like we've been climbing stairs and we've gotten to the top of the stairs and there's an escalator over there. So we have to forget everything we knew about stairs and go learn about escalators. We're still going up. And we're still moving, but it's a whole different way of operating. And if when you get to elevator, for instance, then you have to really forget about stairs and escalators, because the operating system is so completely different. If you try to do stairs and escalators in an elevator, you'll hurt yourself. So we are in the process of leaving old paradigms behind, and the bodies of dolphins and the bodies of what we call Sasquatch, the big hairy folk, they've already left a lot of these paradigms behind. They are proof that letting the paradigms go is survivable, is doable. And there's enough humans now who are beginning to do it that we are beginning to act as proof that it's survivable and doable. And I think that's what's important, that this is a collective thing. We are all doing this together, and we're not, of course, the only 3 species. I've worked with chacma baboons in South Africa, and they are also evolving. So we suspect that all primates on the planet are doing this. Cetaceans are doing this. Elephants are now beginning to get themselves involved. They are very excited about some of the concepts. At the moment, I'm working with about 5 different elephant minds in South Africa, and this is completely over the top for them, but they are excited, because for them the side effect is creating a different relationship with humans, because humans basically are destroying their species and killing them right off the planet. And again, like the Sasquatch said, you know, a more peaceful human is a good thing for everybody. So so there is a mutual evolution that's going on, and I think that's a lot of what motivates them, and that's a lot of what they tell me, is they're curious about what we're doing, because we're making quote-unquote different kinds of noises in the room next door, and they're curious about what that is. What are we cooking up now? And they just, it's their inclination to share, as it is with dolphins. It's just their inclination to share. And we're at that point in our own evolution where we're open and ready, and it's time. So they're available. And it benefits them to be available, and it benefits us to be available. So if I ask them what would they like to communicate here, the first thing that comes through is protocol. The protocols of encounter, and what do you do and what don't you do when you're encountering a Sasquatch, seen or unseen? The first thing is, don't panic, and it's easy to do, especially if the vocalization that you're hearing is like right next to you and very loud, or in the immediate area. The body just freaks out really easy about things like that. Also, sometimes you get an intuitive sense that, or feeling that there's something very large standing next to you, your body's going to freak out. And no matter what your mind tells yourself, your body's going to go into survival instincts. Count on that. So do whatever it takes to get yourself centered, whatever technique you use, get centered, and feel the earth under your feet. That's the one thing that we have in common, and elephants actually taught this to me. We share the same earth. We stand on the same ground, which means we're equal. But it's also for the body very calming, that if it can feel the solidity of the earth under its feet, it feels a little safer. And if you help your body to know that they also stand on that same solidness, that same ground, there is a we that happens, and they're a little less bigger than us. And again, this is just working with the body, because what your mind knows is usually quite different from what your body's doing, if you've ever noticed. So that's the first thing, is don't panic, and then focus on the earth under your feet. And then the communication is, we share the same earth. which means we're equal. I acknowledge you. I honor you. I'm not one down to you. I'm not one up to you. We just are here sharing this moment in time. So that's really the first thing that you do with any intelligent species, but certainly these guys. Calms you, helps them to be calm. And the more calm the two of you are, the more communication you'll get. So don't run. That's just rude. and especially if they're there because they want to communicate, well, then that really is rude. So just be in peace, keep your higher power, or whatever centering mechanism you use, technique you use, keep it running, keep it going, okay? And then just pay attention to what's going on around you. Are they moving? Do you get a sense of a communication? Trust it. It's usually not a voice in your head, and some people have heard audible vocalizations. Some of them do speak English, a broken kind of pidgin English, but I think if I spoke Sasquatch, it'd be very much pidgin Sasquatch too. So, and just go with the flow. I've never heard of a Sasquatch coming in on purpose to hurt somebody. I've never ever heard that story. I've heard them stories about them coming in to joke or to play a joke on you, and they may do something to frighten you. Like one story that I heard just a second hand about a gentleman who's very tough and they don't scare him, and he was in his pickup one evening and they were in the area, they were there, and one of them just stuck his head right in the door where the guy was, and the guy lost it, just completely lost it. It's like to suddenly have that face in your face. It can be a little disconcerting, and so they will play jokes on you. One evening when I was in Oklahoma, and I was staying overnight, and I knew they were in the area, and we'd been communicating back and forth. And I slept in my car that night, and I knew that they were going to bump the car. This is something that they're notorious for. They'll rock the car. And I said, please, look, if you do this, it's going to scare the hell out of me. So if you could just be gentle, go ahead, rock it, bump it, whatever, but be gentle. And sure enough, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just starting to fall asleep, the car go boom. And then immediately a face in my face going, was that okay? It was great. That's great. So they love to play. They can be jokesters. They're also very serious at times. But just talk to them and listen and feel and get a sense. And they're there for a reason. They're going to be there if you're open. Sometimes there's chance encounters. They're so distracted or so busy on something they're doing, they don't actually realize you're around. It's like, as an intuitive, as a psychic, we don't pick up all the information there is to get, thank God. And it's like even non-psychics, you walk into a room, and how much of the data that's there do you actually perceive and store, register? And we're always selective in the information that we get. Well, they're the same way. So frequently, they may not actually realize that they've wandered into your area or vice versa, and they may suddenly get startled and make a noise, or rush, by you, to get away, or, they can have those kinds of responses, which can be, again, quite disconcerting. But I've never ever heard of one actually trying to hurt a human being, except in self-defense. And they're not a threat. They're just simply not a threat. They are an education, and they are a plus to our reality. And there's so much to learn from them. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have experienced them, and have them become a part of my life the way they are, and look forward to the next encounter. And of course, I've got a mind here who's with me right now while we're talking, who's focused in. So I'm going to take a second here and see The communication is basically that they are part of what we're doing. We need you to understand. The more you understand, the easier it is for us. I'm waiting. I think there's a discussion going on back there about what else they would like us to know. There's a general sense of enthusiasm for the communication between the two species. The same way that I get excited about being able to communicate with another species like dolphins or like elephants. It's just like, wow, that's so cool, and there's that in them too. We are a completely different phenomenon. Because we are so different and programmed so differently. So to be able to communicate and have this communication going back and forth, that's cool for them. There's so few who listen or can hear that aren't overruled by their body's responses, and so the freedom to communicate it makes them smile, and they do smile. They're now joking about, we call them the big hairy ones, and we're the small hairless ones. They are the people. They are the folk. They are the people. That's basically what they refer to themselves as, the earth people, the ones of the earth. If I wanted to do a literal translation, the ones of the earth. And I get a sense of them coming up out of the earth, but I think that's symbolic. And I think what they're saying is their genetics comes up out of the earth, as all genetics ultimately do, come up out of the earth in some fashion. That we are children of the earth, that she holds us, nurtures us, supports us in growing and becoming whatever. It's like meeting long-lost cousins that you didn't know you had. Or siblings that you didn't know you had. It's like a coming home to them. In a way, it's a coming home. They are enthusiastic about opportunities to communicate, and again, they really, really appreciate when there's a smooth flow of dialogue that goes back and forth, because they're just as curious about our perspectives as we are about theirs. And to have people go to honestly just honor them for who they are, as opposed to, I want to go see a big hairy thing, the whole hunting. Even though we're not hunting per se, our mind is still needing the experience or wanting to go see one, and there's a pressure on that, and there's a tension to that, and it's not an easy flow. So they're looking for an easy flow of communication back and forth. That's what they're looking for. So for those of you that have had experiences and you doubt yourself, or have been, people trying to talk you out of it, there's an old Cajun saying, what you done swum in, believe in. And what that means is, if you've had the experience, it was an experience, it was a real experience for you, believe in it. And these guys are real. I mean, I've been bumped, the vocalizations, sometimes upon request, and of course the car bumping. And my friend has had, she puts crystals out, and they'll come and they'll rearrange the crystals for her. And I mean, there's so many stories of people who have interacted with them, see them on a regular basis, live with them in the same community or on the same land. I've seen videos, and these are not humans in suits. And when you look in those eyes, that's not a human looking back at you. That's not a human looking back at you. That's something that is so wise and so primate and such a jokester and such a sense of humor. They are an amazing species, and they share our planet. and we're going to be getting to know more and more about them. So keep your mind open, don't go looking, and allow. Don't freak out, and have fun with it. Thanks.